The TKW Autotest software is an extension to the Toolkit workbench and requires this software to be present to be able to function. The Autotest software provides the ability to execute multiple tests consecutively against a system under test, and will provide a report of the results which can be navigated to display details of individual outcomes. The tool is provided with test cases which are defined within the Supplier Certified Requirements Coverage spreadsheet. The test cases are grouped by transport, domains and bundles, and complete sets or subsets of these test cases can be selectively executed. Evidence of the execution of these test cases is required as part of the ITK accreditation process. The tool will enable suppliers to provide evidence for the ITK accreditation process more easily and vastly reduces the effort to execute required tests. This will enable suppliers to retest and regression test their software more often and will generally expedite the manual process of repeated test execution. Generally, TKW Autotest is used as a substitute for a client system when the system under test is operating as a host. However, it can be used to transmit business and infrastructure acknowledgements for CDA documents operating as a substitute for the host. It is designed to automatically execute suites of test cases, sending them to the system under test. TKW Autotest works in three main modes. Client mode, where Autotest Manager prompts that particular requests are transmitted to it from the system under test based upon a test case selection. Host mode, where Autotest Manager transmits requests to the system under test based upon a test case selection. And standalone mode is an interactive front end to the existing TKW transmitter, simulator and validation modes. Currently, the functionality of TKW Autotest supports system under test host and system under test client test modes. It allows users to visually define suites of tests. It supports domains and test packets including child screening, correspondence, HL7v2 ADT patterns 1 and 2, HSCI, PDS mini-services, telehealth, and client negative acknowledgement tests. It's an interactive graphical user interface. It reports the command line system output from the instance of Toolkit Workbench. It performs synchronous and asynchronous ITK messaging. It records all interactions and validates all incoming messages. It supports standalone modes for TKW transmit, simulate and validate functions. It generates a global report per Autotest run which can be navigated through using hyperlinks to validation reports and test message logs. It stores test runs in a separate directory structure, and previously executed Autotest test runs can be replayed. TKW Autotest is installed into the TKW contrib Autotest Manager directory, within which there's the Autotest directory, which contains test evidence from each of the runs. There's the Autotest logs, which is used for the logs which are created when Autotest runs are executed. It contains both the TKW logs and the TKW Autotest Manager Java application logs. The transforms which are used during the testing. There's the TST directory, which contains Autotest script files which are merged instructions for the execution of complete Autotest runs. These files allow for the TKW Autotest to be executed from a saved set of test cases. The TSTP files, and also within this directory we have the Supplier Certified Requirements Coverage document. This spreadsheet's a copy of the document available to all suppliers as a record of the requirements which must be covered for ITK accreditation, and a record of supplier self-certified statements and evidence mapped against each of the requirements. It's very important this document must not be moved or altered as it's used by TKW Autotest Manager. The TKW Autotest Manager.properties file is a file which TKW Autotest relies on. The properties are not intended for direct editing. And finally, there's the TKW Autotest Manager.jar. Double clicking on this will execute and open the program. TKW Autotest Manager opens on the configuration screen. Here we have the requirements file, which is the Autotest Certified Requirements Coverage document, the TKW Properties file, both of which we spoke earlier about and are there for reference. There's the Autotest Manager URL. This is the URL from which the generated message will be sent, including port of the TKW Autotest software. This must not contain a context path. There's the System Under Test URL, which is the URL to which the generated message will be sent. This overrides the transmitter settings in TKW Properties file, including port of the system under test. This must contain a context path. The Autotest Manager can be run in loopback mode, where the to and the from URLs are set to the same value. A warning in the status bar at the bottom of the application window will appear, as this can produce unexpected results. The Close Test Bench output window on completion checkbox will close TKW ATM after the completion of a test run. TKW Stop on Fail checkbox will cease execution of a test case when a failure occurs. This, however, is not a savable configuration setting. At the bottom of the screen we have the Autotest Manager version details. The second tab is the Run Test tab. The Run Test tab allows the selection of test cases in order to create a test run. Autotest executions are called test runs, which are composed of one or more individual test cases. The transport, domain and bundle selection lists form a filter to present a superset of test cases, of which one or more may be selected from the test case selection table to form a test run. This allows for test runs to be executed at domain level. Currently, there is only one selectable transport type, which is web services. Within the domain drop-down, this shows the domain selected and allows the choice via radio button of synchronous or asynchronous message pattern. The asynchronous message is currently only applicable to HL7v2 ADT pattern 1. All the others will use the default synchronous message. There's only one domain which can be selected per test run. Within the bundles, this shows the selected bundle which is under test. One or more bundles can be selected per test run. Multiple rows in the test cases selection table can be selected. Right-clicking here will expose the check highlighted test cases, uncheck or invert. Under the application type under test, application types applicable to the domain selection are displayed. Application host and application client and SMS peak host are available for the system under test. Not all test cases are applicable to testing via the TKW Autotest functionality. When the Hide Unsupported Tests is checked, these tests will not be displayed in the test case selection table. However, when the checkbox is unchecked, the entries will be displayed but greyed out and for information only. Supplementary tests are those which do not form part of the accreditation but are available for suppliers to further test their application. When this is checked, then these tests will not be displayed in the test case selection table. The test case selection table displays the results of the macro filtering of the test cases by domain and bundle. Each row displayed relates to one test case and is directly related to the test cases index tab in the Supplier Certified Requirements Coverage spreadsheet. These can be cross-referenced to the spreadsheet by using the test cases subsection test case ID, test condition. A tooltip appears when the mouse pointer is hovered over the test condition entry, displaying the full test condition description from the spreadsheet. The supported column states whether the test case is supported by TKW Autotest. The selected column allows selection of one or more supported test cases to be part of a test run. These can be set en masse using the 3 buttons at the top of the test case selection table, but as described before, can also be accessed using a right click, check, uncheck and invert. The pass column shows the pass-fail status of the test case row.